great. Well, thanks for the food and
Yeah,
stuff.
of course. Well, enjoy, and I know that Mary and Chris are going to be heading up once y'all kind of finish up your meal time to have a second with you guys to talk about.
Okay, that'll be good.
Yeah.
All right, good. Dave, can we get water? You want water or Coke?
Yes, there's some water over there. We're bringing up some.
Yes, I was told that probably
He is now second generation of Chick-fil-A. He goes up, he drives to Jackson. So this is his first Masters.
So, he got to go to Masters.
I don't know where he got to go or not, but he's sitting on green grass. That's
Okay,
all I
that's
see.
it.
He's sitting up. So
Is your audio muted?
no, I better not.
Yeah,
Don't even. Oh, we just got to do some Yankees flying.
I will,
we
so I appreciate it.
While I'm tired, you know, I did all the papers.
All right, thanks.
So, we went on the- so they were the classes, but,
State test.
Test.
Gonna try to test it.
but
No, you're good.
You know who deal with that? I did. I pressed them because whenever places like people like this that want, Chick-fil-A, they always wanted their waffle fry here. So, so that's, I led the charge to bring these out.
They're great.
Man, they sell a bunch of them
They're
now.
just right.
Check.
Right, we're good to get going.
All right, welcome everybody, to our April 15th meeting. Just a couple of comments. Just want to remind everybody in the audience, today's tax day. So you need to go pay your taxes. I know I paid my state taxes before I got here today, so I'm good for the day. But I still got federal to do later this afternoon, so. Anyway, it is pretty easy to, do y'all do your taxes online?
Yeah.
Where you just pay it, you know, that's great. It's great. So anyway, not that I need to talk about taxes. Just want to remind everybody also is just, I know I pray for our troops every day in theater, and they are doing some amazing stuff there, and hopefully it will turn out the way everybody wants it to turn out. And then just think about the legislators. Obviously, we've passed over, and the budget's out there now, and it's just glad that all that activity comes out and delivers what the state needs. And so, anyway, I think unless anybody's got any other comments, we'll just get John up here and let him start telling us all the great things that have happened since the last time we talked.
Happy to be here.
Good.
Apologize in advance. Pollen plus young children, it's a miracle I can breathe today. But Chairman, board members, happy to be here today. John Hallman, Deputy Commissioner of Office of Family Independence. I think y'all all know me now. Today, on the next slide, I'm gonna present on two topics, but happy to answer any other questions you have or talk about anything you want. I'm going to talk about our on-demand project that's going pretty well. Very excited to share with you some data and an update from our last meeting. And then also in our last meeting, there was a request to talk about SNAP payment error rate. And so I'm going to talk about that as well. The two biggest things happening specifically in the SNAP program, but for me right now. So on the next slide, I'll start off with kind of a refresher on what I mean when I talk about on demand. So previously in the SNAP program, when you apply or once a year when you renew, you have to do an interview with us. And usually those take place over the phone. And historically, we were setting a date and time and calling people at that date and time and hoping they answered. And if they didn't, they had to, play phone tag to try to catch up with them. So we are changing that system so that instead of scheduling the interviews and having to reschedule them if we miss them, we just have a phone line where people can call whenever they want to within 30 days of their application. Right when they submit it, we'll send them a text, we'll send them a notice, and they say, hey, call this number whenever it's convenient for you between 8 and 5, and we will do your interview. And I was very nervous about that. I think last meeting on whether it was going to work out. It's been going really well. And just again, high level, we're doing this for SNAP and Medicaid combo cases. We are not doing it for age cases that involved age blind and disabled Medicaid or TANF right now. It's still in a pilot. If you go onto the next screen, you'll see kind of the phases of the pilot. The first phase was only expedited applications. So that's folks that have little or no resources. We have to do those interviews within 7 days. So that's the biggest challenge for us from a standard of promptness perspective. So we started with the hardest group. That's actually about 2/3 of our applications. We're required to submit or accept short applications. So you just have to put your name, your address, and sign it, and you have to accept that. But you can provide as much information as you want, but we have to assume people who don't report income have no income and process those within 7 days. And so that went really well. Phase 1 went really well. And March 30th, we opened it up to all applications. So now any application that's submitted for SNAP or SNAP plus Medicaid qualifies for on-demand interview. So those folks, when they submit their application, they will get a thing that says, hey, call us whenever you're ready, and we will do your interview over the phone. And assuming this phase goes well, phase 3 will expand that to the renewal interviews as well.
And how long after the information is received do people begin to get the money?
Next day.
next day.
Well, so if we can complete their eligibility determination right then,
Right.
we'll send out a card the next day.
Wow. Okay.
So,
That's good.
yeah, we'll authorize, we try to do it all at one time. Along with this on-demand interview process change, we've been kind of trying to push the workers to do what we call first contact resolution. So
Okay.
take the time when you have the client, that first interaction, to get everything you need from them. If they need to provide income verification, walk them through how to do that. Stay on the phone with them, be like, take a picture of the pay stub and walk them through how to upload it onto Gateway. Because previously, we were in a bad spot with, just our workload. So we're going really fast, and we'd be like, hey, you need to submit this, you need to submit this, you need to submit this. I'll send you a verification checklist that outlines all that. Goodbye. But now it's, let me walk you through that. Because, we ended up having to touch those cases multiple times or help those folks when they get into Gateway and don't know how to do the upload. So we're just real focused on kind of slow down the speed up kind of thing. So the less times we have to touch them, it actually makes the case go a lot faster too.
Good.
Yeah. So, sorry. So that's been going really well. I think on the next slide. Oh wait, this is still an overview. So this is a good point that there's two chances for us to talk to folks. One is when they call us, but when the folks who are just waiting for people to call in, they don't just sit around and wait. While call volumes are low, we actually do cold calls out to people.
Good.
So we call it a first contact call, but it's basically a cold call. To anybody who has a pending application who hasn't called us yet, we try to reach them in our downtime. On the next slide, you'll see, kind of walk you through that experience, and y'all can read this, but basically they have the option to wait on hold, or they can elect to receive a callback. If you've ever called, I had to call Ashley Furniture to do a return the other day, and I got a call back 10 minutes later instead of waiting on that.
All the airlines are doing that too now.
Yeah, it's a better way, it's no one wants to sit on the phone. And but I want to explain that because when I talk about the data, which I think might be the next slide. So the wait times here are broken out by that. So in the month of February, it's kind of tiny, but we did over 25,000 people called into the line. The average wait time was about 24 minutes. And for the people who just sat and waited, the average wait time was 8 minutes. The people who got a call back, the average wait time was 50 minutes. And so there's an asterisk there because that includes, when we get towards the end of the day, we try to call back people 2 times. So if you say, hey, I want to call back, and then the system will automatically call the person. And if they answer, then it's passed on to one of my workers. So the caseworker's not dialing your phone number. The system's calling them. If they connect, then it puts them into a queue for a live person to try to save some time, which is really great, really efficient way. But if it misses them, we wait a little while and call them back again. And that kind of skews the wait time a little bit.
Yeah.
So really, folks are waiting like 10 minutes. And that's amazing. I was not expecting, I'm very happy with how this has gone. And we were able to do over 10,000 of those outbound calls that I talked about too in the first month. The next slide is the second month. So in the month of March, we were able to do even more. We did almost 31,000 calls that came in. Average wait time was, you can see, a little bit lower. For inbound calls, it was 6.5 minutes. The callback, again, because it sometimes that rolls over into the next day, that skews that a little bit. It was about 40 minutes, but been very happy about our ability to staff this phone line successfully and not have crazy wait times and things like that. So we've been working through some things. It is a pilot, so there have been some folks saying they can't get through the line, and we've been working through some of those things, but it's been very minimal challenges from a technology perspective. So been very happy with this and how it's been going. It's really, on the next couple slides I have, I'm not going to read through these either, but I put in some comments from the staff. We've been getting a lot of positive, it's rare to, people don't reach out when they're having a good time, right? They reach out to complain, but we've actually had a lot of positive feedback from this of folks who have been, we have folks that watch Facebook, to keep an eye out for what's happening. People have been forwarding me things of people who were expecting, the application process to take a long time. but them being pleasantly surprised, you know, I applied, I got a text, I called, it was over. 2 days, and we mailed a card out for folks. So people have been pretty happy with that. And as you go on the next slide, you'll see some of the staff being happy about not having, you know, being given the time to take, or us allowing them to take the time to really work with the clients and get everything they need on that first time, reduces that chasing people around, the back and forth kind of thing. You know, how making this more convenient for clients, you know, is really a better system for everyone. So been very happy with how that's going. And, you know, if we continue to have success, that'll just be how all SNAP applications and renewal interviews go from now on. You know, that's kind of the plan. If it's a pilot right now, but if it's successful, we'll just keep expanding until it's no further.
So is all the, it's a pilot, so I understand, is all the SNAP sign up going through this now?
Correct. We didn't pick like a county to start with or anything like that. We did segment it based upon some workflows that we use. So like I said earlier, we started with just those expedited ones that we have to do in 7 days. Unexpedited ones, we have 30 days to contact that person. And so now we're doing both of those groups, but we're not doing the renewals yet. And you have to be, it takes a little more training to process a TANF application or to process a age blind and disabled Medicaid case. So those ones, we're still scheduling interviews with those families.
So they're not, TANF's not in this pilot program?
Correct. But TANF and ABD Medicaid are a small portion of the total population. But we hope to include them soon. You know, just want to make sure it works well before we make it too complicated. But the routing system we have has been working really well. The phone system that we use has been an excellent tool as well. Platform 28 is our vendor there. They've been great partners.
Who was the vendor again for the phone system?
Platform 28. The whole agency, DHS, uses Platform 28. And we made the change over to that right before going on. Yep. Okay.
Is this just for current applicants or is this for new applicants also?
It's only for new applications right now.
New applicants.
So renewals, that'll be phase 3. I hope to do that around June is when I'll probably.
I'm gonna ask the 800-pound gorilla question. Have citizenship, how do we, is that part of the?
It is.
Okay.
Yep. It's always been part of we have to confirm citizenship before we can issue benefits.
Is that, do we do it or is the federal government do that?
We require them to provide proof of citizenship as part of the application process. And there's a number of ways you can do that. We do have access to a federal database that we can check, but they can provide documentation as part of their application packet too.
Right.
Yeah.
Important.
Yeah, good question. My next topic, I think, will take a long time to get through. So if there are no more questions, I'll go ahead and move on to that. So SNAP.
Good so far.
Yep. SNAP payment error rate. Some people abbreviate that to PER. Is the next topic I'm going to talk about. This has become a greater focus over the last year or so because of the changes that were enacted in the One Big Beautiful Bill, or HR 1. The big change for us is that, you know, there have always been monitoring of the quality of the work that we do, and payment error rate has always had, you know, corrective action plans and potential penalties linked to it, but that they were dramatically increased with the passage of that bill. So now when states' payment error rate exceeds 6%, states will pay a part of the benefit issuance amount. And so that historically has been 100% federally funded, which is why they have so much control over the SNAP program. We have a little more flexibility in Medicaid because that's a cost-sharing program between the states and the federal government, but they're shifting some of that cost onto the states if they have high payment error rates.
What's our payment error rate?
On the next slide, I will walk you through. Well, actually, it's a couple slides forward. So let me get back. I'll show you. But let me just go through the change. So this is part of what I said. You know, above 6%, and it's based upon the actual amount. It's a percentage. So the amount we'll have to pay is based upon the issuance amount. And so I took the 2025 issuance amounts and broke them out by if we had to pay 5%, 10%, or 15% of that issuance amount. We pushed out $3.5 billion a year through SNAP. And so 15% of that is $515 million, which is a big number. And so going from 0% or $0 to $515 million, obviously a very big jump for us. This is going to happen. This is scheduled to start in 2028. I think on the next slide, there's a couple of caveats to that though. If your payment error rate in federal fiscal year 25 is higher than 13.33%, it actually is delayed from federal fiscal year 28 to 29. If it's higher than 13.33 in 26, it's delayed from 29 to 30. And that was a provision that was entered by a state that had a high payment error rate. And if you'll go to the next slide, you'll see our payment error rate historically is going to put us, so our 2025 error rate is going to put us into that delayed status. It's not official yet because FNS does a second level review of all the work that we do. But we are above that 13.33% in 2025. It may change a couple percentage, like tenths or hundredths of a percentage point, but we are definitely going to be above that number.
So that would cost the state $500,000. roughly.
$500 million.
I'm sorry, $500,000,000.
Yes, it's a B.
Yeah.
So that is a big, that is a,
Yeah,
I think I heard you talking with my chief of staff earlier about what are the top 3 biggest issues of the, and that
Yes.
definitely makes it into the top 3. So the rest of my presentation is going to be about what we're doing to correct this. But you can see historically here during the public health emergency around the COVID-19 pandemic, they didn't track payment error rate during that time period. But you can see from the national average that everyone is struggling with this because of the impact of that time period. You may recall from previous presentations, we took a big hit staffing wise. And if someone were to ask me, what do you need to do to turn your payment error rate around? I need 1,000 more people that have worked here for 5 years.
wow.
Because it's very complicated. Doing the SNAP, administering SNAP program, doing an eligibility determination is complicated. And it takes, we train folks for 6 months before we let them work a case by themselves. And, it takes, I think, another 6 months-ish to, be considered proficient in it and not need very close supervision. So, the people are really, we need the people. And, we're pushing, I'll go through some process stuff and some technology stuff we're doing too. But, FNS, the federal agency that regulates this, wants a human being to do every eligibility determination. And every family is different. Every situation is different. And it's very complicated. And so having people stick around for longer is the best way to improve our payment rate. We've been doing a lot about retention and I've presented on that. So I won't focus on that too much today, but I will go through kind of what we've been doing too. But does anyone have any questions about kind of the structure of that before I get into?
Well, one thing you mentioned was in order to achieve the correct results of this, that you need an extra 1,000 people actually answering the phones.
Well,
doing it.
so I don't need 1,000 more people than I have today. I just need the people that work here today to stay. Our turnover rate has been decreasing because of the retention efforts that we've been doing. So we've been doing a lot better in that perspective. But I looked at some of our historical
We were losing 20%.
HR data.
We were losing 20% a year.
Yeah, so before the pandemic, I would say we always, we have a lot of turnover. It's a big agency, it's a hard job. And about 20-ish% of our staff had less than 2 years experience. I looked at it again with our current workforce. It's over 50% of our staff have less than 2 years experience. So that, it's been great that we've been able to hire all those people and we've risen our, I have like 600 or 700 more people than I did 3 years ago, but all those people are new. And so they are learning and we're trying to build up their confidence and their skill level. But, the focus has been on getting work done because we were just in such a point where it's just like, we need more people to meet. Now that we have those people, we need to keep them around so they can do it right. And so we've shifted from a timeliness focus to a quality focus with our work.
So how confident are you that the turnover issue is what's driving the PER rate?
Pretty confident, you know.
What does our turnover rate look like compared to other agencies and departments in Georgia?
That I don't know, but our HR team, I think we can get that for you. We have been able to bring that rate down though.
Mhm.
We were in the like mid-20s, I think, in the 2021,
But we lowered the standards
2022.
too, didn't we, in order to get those people?
Historically, we, required more from a case manager than we do now.
They had to have a college education, now they don't.
Correct. That didn't happen in the past 5 years though. We've had to do that before.
Oh.
Before this. And we did big pushes for hiring, and luckily, for us, the job market turned around. It was very, hard to recruit people, and now it's a little easier to get people to come. And we've been doing things to try to focus our efforts on high quality candidates and screening, implemented like an assessment.
So
Yeah, I'm working on
historically, would you characterize the turnover rate as declining?
It has definitely over the past 5 years.
What is it now?
Declined a lot. I think, and this we can provide to you again, but it was kind of in the mid-20s, I think, when it was at its worst in the 21, 22 time period, and now we're down to like high teens. I think it was maybe 18-ish last
Before you
year.
go to.
Yep.
I just, I'm going back on recent history on the.
Sure, yeah.
What we're paying our
Right.
error rate. From what you're telling, are you saying that, we're gonna make changes, you're gonna talk about that, but if we don't make the changes, we're saying we got a $500 million net, we're gonna have to crack.
Correct.
Okay, so that's, in other words, that's already forecasted, and the guys over in the Gold Dome, they understand.
There was a lot of conversation about that during this legislative session. So they're aware.
Do you have any HR studies that can help explain why the turnover rate is where it is?
I don't, but I do know.
Do you think it's compensation?
Oh, for sure. So we do exit interviews
18%.
with folks when they leave, and compensation is always one of the top
One of the
drivers.
top ones.
Yeah, and that's data that we can provide to you
So-
and our HR folks.
Well, that's something we can help you with from our position, because I can find $500 million worth of money that otherwise could be going to our people, right?
Right.
Maybe that's something as a board we need to focus on. That if you can give us the data that supports your position, there are things we can do as a board and as board members to help you solve this problem. And that is part of our job. And if it is as simple as, and simple, right, in quotes, but if it's as simple as we have people that are working very hard and they have opportunities outside of this agency that otherwise want to stay here, but the concern about compensation, and otherwise $500 million is going into a black hole that we're never going to see anyway.
Right.
Why can't we make the argument that a certain percentage of that money, which otherwise would be going to the feds, should stay here with our people, decrease the PER? It seems like we can make the argument that there's a great return on investment.
Paying more, you mean, those salaries?
Yeah, because otherwise we're going to spend $500 million. Why can't a lot of that just go to our people? They do a great job. And if that's the real driver, I think if we can get the data, we can make a very good argument. Nothing in politics is a no-brainer, but this one has some political legs to it, and it makes sense economically to do so. But we're going to have to rely on you and your team to pull all of that data together for us, and then we're happy to do what we can to help you solve this problem.
Yeah, that's great. I appreciate your support, and that's definitely something we'll get for you. I like to think that the things that I have done to try to improve retention have been successful over the past couple of years. We also, over the past 4-ish years, have received pay increases from the legislature and the governor's office too. So I think about $7,000 worth of raises during this time period too, to everyone's baseline. So caseworkers used to start around 32, and now they start around 38, 39. And that's helped. I also, maybe a year ago, bumped up the supervisor pay grade a level. So instead of 1 jump, it's 2 jumps to try to retain those folks. And supervisor retention levels are much higher than they used to be as well. So we have seen improvements with pay. I think a lot of it, I'm trying to make their jobs better.
Yeah.
But I think the pay helped a lot.
Well, the
More pay would
automation that
continue
you've
to help.
identified with your pilot program, I mean, there's always a systems issue, right? And you're working hard to solve that systems with your people, with the automatic return on calls, some of the benefits of your pilot program. But here we have a situation where we may have a resolution path forward. There's, for example, you could create a large collective pool, bonus pool, that as you shave down the PER, it releases more money for your entire team, so that everybody's vested in getting that number below 13.33. So there are a number of ways we could help you, and it's not our position to tell you what to do, but you should use us. Data is going to, and that knowledge is going to be leverage and power for us to go out and fight this fight for you and employees at DHS.
Well, I appreciate that support, and we'll work on getting that for you. I've heard incentive-based, some states do incentive-based things like that and have linked it to their quality of their work. And we're building that into our performance reviews for workers and supervisors too. And so the system is there to do it if it was allowed.
And who would have to decide if it's allowed or not?
So I think we would need the funding from the legislature, and I'm not 100% sure about the rules from an HR perspective, but that's something we can look into as well.
I know staffing's everybody's challenge
Sure.
throughout state agencies here and elsewhere and throughout all business. What, besides the new sign-up issue, how can we employ technology? Because that's obviously the answer.
Sure.
We're not going to be able to hire because they're not just don't exist.
Right.
All the people we would need to do this, yourself.
Right.
So how can we employ technology or AI or whatever to lower this rate?
Sure.
And what have we looked at other states and their best practices? Because I know there are states that are working on this too.
For sure.
And they may be ahead of us.
Yeah, and we've met with a lot of them too, very recently. And there are organizations that bring us together, but we've been met with Tennessee or Kentucky last week, and 2 weeks before that met with Tennessee, 2 states close to us that's similar, and have pay their rate improvements that they've done and hear what they do. And I'll just go ahead and maybe we can, Emily, if you don't mind, skip ahead I'll go to the technology one, maybe slide, since Scott asked about that first on the next slide. I think it is. So from a technology, like you're right. So like me saying I want 1,000 more people to live here for 5 years, that won't happen for 5 years. But so what we're trying to do is use technology to guide those folks, so to prevent them from making mistakes. So one thing we implemented in January of this year is what we call quality checks in Georgia Gateway, which is the system they use to process eligibility. So a basic example of that is to prevent them from making a mistake. The system will stop them and be like, hey, what you just entered doesn't make sense. So if someone's expenses, so if their rent is higher than their income, it'll stop them and say, hey, their expenses is higher than their income. How do they make that work? Ask that question. And maybe they have some other form of income, while they're processing the case. they're doing this first contact resolution principle. Key as you go is another one where they're entering it as they're talking to the person. And so the system will be like, hey, ask another question about this. This doesn't make sense. Or this, like, the childcare expenses for this family are way high. Like, is that right? Can you just double check with them? And they either have to make an edit to the system or enter a case note to explain what the client said to explain that discrepancy. So we're working on, we put in some in January. In May, next month, I have another batch that are going in that actually include, it's going to be not only in the worker portal side, but we're going to put it on the customer portal side. So when they're entering, when they're actually filling out the application, if something doesn't make sense, we'll be like, hey, just double checking, these numbers don't add up. So really trying to use technology in that way, on the front end for the clients and for the workers to try to catch those mistakes before they happen. And then once they're in the system, my second bullet here, we have a project called Find It, Fix It project. So we work with a vendor called SAS, SAS. They're a data analytics firm. And what they're doing is looking at all of our case data to try to identify things like that, where expenses exceed income on a case that's already been approved. And it actually uses artificial intelligence in its model, and it identifies cases where there are discrepancies, and it ranks them from like 1 to 9 on whether there's a potential for an error to be there. And then we send those to the field to look at within the month they were approved to try to correct them before they count against us. Which, you know, all of these things, those two things slow the work down a little bit though, right? So the person who's processing the case will take them longer to explain why there's a discrepancy or to go back and talk to the person. Find it, fix it, you know, that's a completed case. I have to find resources to go back and redo a case. And so some of the challenges I'm having, it gets back to capacity, where it's like, if somebody's reworking a case, they're not working a new case. And we operate kind of very closely to our current capacity with our workload. So one of the challenges we're having is, it's been very successful, Find It, Fix It, in identifying potential errors and things that need to be fixed. It's just finding the people with the knowledge to correct the case correctly is some of the things we're working to do now. So we've been doing that for a couple months now, and really trying to refine that process.
Do you have an idea what the rate of, I don't know if we call them difficult cases or anomalous cases, but the cases where you have an extensive amount of follow-up, you know what rate, let's say out of 100 applications, how many would require that?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I think like the Find It, Fix It project itself, you know, I think we had like 2,000 cases we wanted to relook at last month, and we approve, you know, a much higher number than that. So we'll do
Triple that, double that.
we do about like 120-ish thousand a month, I think. If you combine applications and renewals. Yeah, no, the numbers are like kind of crazy. So like if the volume that we're talking about and all this stuff is really hard to deal with, like, but there's 700,000 families on SNAP, and we have to check in with them, most of them every 6 months, some of them every 4 months. And so each one of those check-ins is you know, that's 1.4 million chances to make a mistake, or you know, even higher for like our work requirement folks, it's every 4 months. And so there's a lot there, and a lot of it, you know, folks who've worked here for 1 year doing most of that work.
Sure.
So, you know, that'll be something that we solve over time. And so it's, you know, again, I always say that's what I need, but to get there, you know, if Emily, if you don't mind going back one slide, the people piece, you know, that's why I'm focusing a lot of my efforts on, is building up their capacity and their knowledge. We immediately after the bill came out, we already planned on doing this. We do annual trainings, but we did an in-person annual training focused on the leading drivers of our payment error rate. We did a refresher training on just how to process a SNAP application renewal, 2-day instructor-led training for every single caseworker went through that. We've created a nesting program that I've talked about before that was originally aimed at retention and getting people to stay in the program who were coming on as new hires. We've expanded that so that it's not just we were just doing it for our statewide renewal team, which is where most of our new folks were coming in, but now it's the whole agency. It's also, we were doing the 6 months of training. We're also now doing 30 days after training for on-the-job support. And then once a month, we're doing targeted micro trainings on, this month, this like earned income or unearned income category was high error rate. Let's focus and do a training just on that.
Yeah, on the, on the standards or minimums and what, does the minimum stay as is, or is there an inflation clause or something in the minimum standards for people to just stay on SNAP? I mean, is it if we start out at X, 4 years from now, is X still X, or is it X plus whatever?
It is indexed to inflation.
It's indexed.
It's assessed,
So.
and that changes over time too with, it's linked to the farm bill.
Who sets, is that something the state sets or the Fed set the index?
It's set at the federal level.
Is that
States
set-
do have some flexibility on what they can allow, but we do not exercise any of that flexibility. We follow the federal standard.
So, for example, like Social Security, it goes by the inflation index. Is that what they use, or is it some other number?
So federal poverty line is so if you're above or if you're below the federal
Right.
poverty line, that's the metric that they use, and it's linked to that. Yeah. So as the federal poverty limit goes up and down, the
So we're
SNAP eligibility would go up and down.
So we're sort of caught in the catch-22 on that one, regardless.
Correct. And states have some options to expand eligibility, but we don't exercise any of those.
Other incomes, do you have to account for tips?
get out of it.
Now that there's
We do.
tax-
Yeah,
You
it still
count
counts
that
as income.
in as income for this. but
Correct.
Just not,
We don't get taxed.
income, yeah.
John, have we ever had a PDR rate below 6%?
That's a good question. We have. It's been a while. So we had, this hasn't really been an issue for Georgia in a long time, though. Whenever you get a new eligibility system, you are given a grace period of 3 years. And so Georgia Gateway was implemented in 2017. So 17 to 20 didn't count. 20 was the COVID years, and now here we are. And so it's been quite a while since this was a focus in the state, which is a positive thing because, our error rate hasn't been under that. But, it's challenge, there's a lot of things that go into it. And really, again, I think the workforce piece is the leading one, but, the complexity of the system and the program itself that you use to administer it really make it hard to quickly change or improve. One other thing I was going to talk about later in the process section is our QC sampling plan. So the process to determine our payment error rate is based upon a plan that we make up and the feds approve. And our plan hadn't been changed in, I think, over 30 years. And what we do every month, so for the month of March 2026, we'll go out and grab 100 cases from the total population of 700,000 cases. And my QC staff, who's kind of firewalled off for me, I can't influence them. They will redo those cases completely, call the client, re-verify every piece, every data point in that case, and determine whether either the person was eligible or ineligible. And then if they were eligible, were we off in that budget? So if they said they had, a $20 power bill, but power is actually included in their rent, in their apartment, that would be an error. So a lot of people think about it being payment error rate isn't all people who weren't eligible at all. It's actually mostly not. It's, you don't just get SNAP, you don't, it's it's a budget. And so we are submitting changes to our sampling plan to change it from just the whole population, because 100 out of 700,000, that's not statistically significant at all. It's not, it's crazy. That's what's used to determine a $500 million penalty. So the changes we're suggesting or we're requesting are to limit it to just actions that were taken in that month. So only applications or renewals that I actually touched that month will be part of the sample. And we're also building in a geographic to try to get a geographically accurate or diverse sample. So if you pull 100 from 700,000, I bet, 90 of them will be from Metro Atlanta, but trying to make it so that it'll be more representative of the state and the program.
And those are at random?
Yeah, it's random sampling. Yep. And so right now it's, 100 out of 700,000. And if we divide it by what happened that month, it'll be closer to, 100,000, 120,000.
So we set the parameters. I'm surprised by it. This is interesting.
Yeah.
We set the parameters for our error rate, the FNS, which is, if you're not familiar, it's USDA Food and Nutrition Service.
Yep.
The girls of federal program. I have this thing with using acronyms.
Sure.
But, and they approve it. Do we know how similar, question just came to mind when you said, how similar our structure is on PER measures to other states?
It's all pretty, they all have to be, they're guidelines.
Yeah.
It's not just make it up however you want to, and it has to be random, and the reason it's we submitted ours in November, I think, and it's still pending with them because we've been going back and forth with their statisticians. Because there's structures that have to be in place to make sure it's even and fair and all that stuff. But we just, one of the things that's frustrating for me is I could make a change today, and the process for them to redo those cases and give me the most recent month I have data from is November of 2025. That was the last published data.
Yeah.
And so the payment error rate lags by 6 months just because of the review process. Yeah. So I made this change I was talking about earlier with the quality checks in the system, and I think that'll be great, but that won't be, I've got 2 more months before I'll see that month's. So it'll be July before I know if that it was even effective or not. And the impact will only be on 100 cases out of 700,000. And so maybe those 100 didn't go through that process or had some different, issue. So it's it's frustrating that this is how we're assessed and that's the impact. But I have a team of 30 people who this is all they do all day is redo these cases. And so, it would take an army of people to look through. You can't look through 120,000. Even a statistically.
help you with?
So that's what the Find It, Fix It project is trying to do. Get more of a population level view into our quality. But really, it can only work off the data points it has. If someone doesn't tell me they don't have a job or they have a job, I don't know. It's hard for us to know that kind of stuff.
Is our payment error rate affected by underpayments?
That we pay people too
little.
few. Yes, it's overpayments and underpayments. And I will say it's skewed heavily towards overpayments rather than underpayments because of most of it's based on income, and we tend to under capture rather than over capture.
Do you have any idea what that percentage might be?
I do.
Between,
if you give me a minute, I can pull it up. We do get great data from our my quality team is great, but the struggle is really just the process, the volume of things that we go through.
Sure.
So far this year, this is a question someone asked earlier. Our payment error rate for federal fiscal year 2025, we've only had 2 months reported on so far. October was 11%, and November was 15%, so around 13.347 for federal 26. In those 2 months, overpayments were 6.4%. Overpayments were $4,410 and under were $662. So percentage wise, I have it broken out weird here because I have ineligible also.
okay.
But it's 47% versus 7% of the total error rate. So it's really overpayments more than underpayments because people won't say they have more money. They make more money than that's less likely, I'll say. People will get new jobs rather than, and when they lose a job, they tell us about that pretty quickly because that puts them in, a tough spot to cover their food for their family.
John, when they're evaluating these 100 cases, So you're talking about a lot of this as like an interview, like a phone call, right? So what documentation does the client upload? Are they required to upload, like the rental agreement that includes the power bill?
Yep.
So how do you verify that other than, I know they're providing us with paper,
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
so.
Some things are acceptable and some things are not. You know, we and we used to accept shelter as a deduction for the budget. So your rent, depending on what your rent is, that can lower your overall income that we use to calculate how much benefit you get. We are allowed to accept client statement for that. So people just tell us what their rent is and we would accept it. I ended that a year and a half ago because that was one of the leading drivers of our errors, because the caseworker, they say, how much do you pay in rent? They'd say $700 a month. We'd accept that and move on. And that makes the process go faster. But then the QC team calls them and they say, how much rent do you pay? And they say $700 a month. They're like, send me your lease. Like, oh.
Yeah.
Or they'll get it and it'll be different. Or they'll get it and they'll find out it includes utilities, and they were claiming utilities separately. And usually, most of the time, I will say clients aren't doing it on purpose. They're not intentionally misleading us. A lot of people don't think about it. Like if they get child support payments, people don't think about that as income, but it counts in your budget as unearned income. And, unemployment benefits, medical deductions are really complicated. We had the option to start including internet as a utility, and that recently away, but most of the clients are not doing it on purpose. So I don't want y'all to leave here. I feel like I mischaracterized that earlier. I will say I'm sure there are some people trying to maximize the amount of money they will get, but most people are pretty honest. And we need to ask the right questions. And that's what those tools we're trying to build in, is to ask people questions. So if they report something it doesn't make sense, it just triggers another question to get the full story from the family. Yeah. I feel like I've spent a lot of time. One thing I do want to talk about though in process, one thing that we did. So again, we were in a bad spot with capacity versus workload. And one thing that we did implement after working with our federal partners for a long time was something called periodic reports. And periodic reports, I said once a year we have to do an interview for renewal. Every 6 months we have to check in with them. And there is a policy option to do. We can do a full, you have to basically completely reapply for the program every 6 months, share all the information about your household, or you can do a periodic report, which basically just says, has anything changed about your circumstances, yes or no? And it's not just that, there's like 10 questions. It's like, did anyone join your household? Did you get a job? To check all these things. And we implemented periodic reporting under me. I did that. That was my thing, to try to be able to get out from under a workload backlog. And it was very successful. We do not have a backlog anymore. Our application timeliness has been 95% over the past 4 months, which was never, that's the first 4 months that has ever happened when I've been in this role. But one problem with that is that those questions, you have to mark every single one of them. And if you just write no really big on the form, and my client or my caseworker accepts that entire allotment is an error. So if that household was going to get $1,400 a month, the error is now $1,400 for that one case. And so in the month of November, I told you our payment error rate was 15 and some change percent. If we didn't have periodic reporting errors, it would have been 7%. And so in March, last month, I ended the use of periodic reports. And so now clients will need to submit during the renewal process, we'll have to submit all of the information about their household. And our caseworkers will have to verify more. It will take more time, but it will remove that driver of our payment error rate from the calculation. And we can't make changes to people's certification periods during the certification period. So because I ended it in March, people will continue to be able to submit periodic reports until 6 months later than that. So September of this year will be when that is completely phased out. So I think that will improve our payment error rate a lot. You know, I won't say all 7% of that would have been right if they had done a more thorough review, but we wouldn't have these ones where it's just filling out the form wrong. Like those are gonna be gone. I've been using one of the technology things that I was gonna talk about on the other side, optical character recognition. We can scan the documents now, and I'm actually using it to go back and scan previous submissions to try to identify any of those incorrectly accepted ones and fix those and things like that. So we're doing a lot to try to improve, and hopefully you feel that way after my super long, they're probably like mad at me for taking, I knew this was gonna take a little while. That's why I did on-demand first, because that's what I actually want to talk about, celebrated success, which I do, that's really changed the whole program and for the better for the clients. And this is something we have to deal with as well. And I think, you know, that those principles of first contact resolution, the standardization through the on-demand process that we're implementing around documentation, building all these things, all of that's going to improve the program as a whole and will lead to, you know, hopefully workers sticking around longer, payment error rate coming down. And I do think that we can get below 6%.
Do you have a goal for, you know, like the error rate? You have, so I know you have a target, but do you, the timeline on that? I mean, is it?
So, great question. So because our payment error rate was above 13.3% in 2025, that gave us another year. So we won't have to pay the state share until 2029. If this year we don't improve below 13.3%, that will give us another year. So there's a disincentive to improve this year, but we're not trying, there's the sampling methodologies, you can't game that. So we're trying to do the best we can. So the goal is to be under 6% in federal fiscal year 2027. And I would love to do it in 2026, which is this year, but we're already, you know, so this is the 7th month of federal fiscal year 2027. So 2027 is already half over. So we're doing a lot of these things, but it does take a long time to implement some of them and for them to show up in the reviews.
Can you track it, you know, right now, like for seven months, have you sort of have an idea now whether anything's happening or moving in that direction, or you just got to wait till the end of the year to see what happens?
We kind of have to wait to see what comes out of the sample, you know, because it's such a small sample of such a big population. You never know what you're gonna, like in the summer of last year, I was in the single digits. And then the last month of last year, it was 21%. But it's just because we pulled bad cases. And if you pull high allotment error cases, it just kills you. And
is there a reason for that jump? Is there
nothing was happening different in the month of June than was happening in the month of, you know, September. So it's really luck of the draw a lot with it. So, and that's why we submitted the sampling plan change to try to narrow that population, and so that when I make changes, you can feel the impact faster in the payment error rate too. And all that's allowed. It's just, you know, hadn't been looked at in a long time. It hadn't really been a problem for so long that now we're trying to refine those processes to make them more representative of our work. Because I do think we're doing better. You know, we were working very quickly to get through, because, you know, every one of those renewals that sits for 2 months is a family that's not getting food that they need to eat, or, you know, to be healthy. So that weighs on people, you know, and so they want to get the work done. But now we have the staffing level to do the work. We don't have to go as fast. We have a better system, I think, with the on-demand interview process. So it's just, we've built systems now. It's just keep the people around, keep that training going, refine, you know, use technology and refine some of those processes to, I think I'm very confident. It's the numbers are high and haven't been improving as fast as people want them to, but I feel like we're doing a lot. And trying to learn from other states to see what they're doing too. And we're all in this, you know, in the same boat. And
well, I'll grant you, given the size of the SNAP program, 100 is an incredibly low sample. But that's driven by people above us at the federal level. And I know you guys are working hard on it. I know and I appreciate you taking the time to give us this report and communicating with us outside this board meeting, with updates on, because I know you get regular updates on the error rate and for sharing that. I know you're working hard.
You get the error rate once a month?
We do. Yeah, and the QC folks send it to the feds the same time they send it to me. We get it at the same time.
Could you just send us a copy
We can.
every month?
Yeah.
Yep.
That might just,
That would help a
Yeah.
lot, John, if you could send us a copy and just.
So we can see what the trend is.
Right.
all right,
I know you're working hard, but
we appreciate it.
Yeah, we do.
But we also have to, realization is there are 48 states doing better than we are.
Sure.
And that's just a fact. I know, and I do a lot of work in literacy, and there's 38 states that are doing better than we are. And so that's
But
why
there's always Mississippi.
we really address it, That's why we've taken most of the great ideas that we have, honestly, from other states that are ahead of us.
Yeah.
And I just want to know, because this is particular interest of mine, you can tell. I know Ohio has done some significant work on lowering their error rate and seem to be on track, just because I've looked into it in other states. I just want to make sure, I know that staffing, and I know you're working on it and you've made some progress on it. I want to make sure that we know you got the best tools to work with. Because if there are other states that have better tools, and I believe that there's money in the budget to address our error rate, isn't that correct?
There is.
Provided that,
We did get some funding from the legislature. Yep.
So however those dollars are spent, I want us to know that we're doing it by best practice.
Right.
And I know you do too, but I just wanted to say that.
Sure. Yeah, and we talked to other states. We actually talked to Ohio.
Okay.
One of the process things on here, I didn't get time and it would take a long time, was we submitted some waivers to FNS because they allow you to make policy exceptions or to adjust regulations. They submitted a bunch and we liked them and we submitted them too. None of them have been approved yet, but we do talk. We have, even with specifically Ohio, about things, and FNS facilitates meetings of states, and there's a conference or a group called APHSA that we're part of that helps bring states together to share best practices too. There's a conference that I'm going to in August, I'm presenting at.
Good.
And so we do have a lot of those touch points, and everybody specific, this has brought a lot of us together. Me and the Kentucky person became best friends, I think, on our last call, and we'll have more calls. And we talked to Texas and neighboring states that with similar populations. It's really good to connect with them. So we do a lot of that.
We appreciate your hard work, and thanks for the report, and thanks for your patience with our questions.
Yes.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Take up.
All right, Mr. Roberts, see if you can beat him, okay?
Thank you very much. All right. Good to see you again, Chairman. Welcome back.
Yes,
Good to be with the board. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for being here. We're going to talk today a little bit about foster care. We're going to take a view of the foster care system. It's where I started my career in foster care. And so it's always when I talk about it, my brain always goes back to my early foster care days and the children. Now, if I look back, they're 30-year-old adults now, or 40-year-old adults now, but in my heart, there'll always be kids. It's kind of funny how that moment in time is captured in your head. So it always roots me when I'm talking about foster care, working in foster care. We made it our point to make the most hard to see data possible, so you'd ask no questions. So that was all deliberate, in case you're wondering. That was
At
intentional.
least it's in front of you.
Yeah, I'm only kidding, but it is hard to see though. But I want to take us on a journey, more of a high level journey. This data, like we mentioned about other data, it's not really comparative data. Adoption Foster Care Analysis Reporting System, AFCARS, is a repository of state data. The states send their data up to. It's not something you can compare. I mean, it's really more of a trend and helps you look at your own state. You can look at some research and look at some different possible options and hypothesis, but there's a lot of context to it. So I do want to say up front, we're going to look at it more broad and high level. Maybe some questions that come out we can explore, but it's really not designed as a report card, so to speak. And so again, it's really our vehicle as we look through foster care. We're going to use AFCARS to look through it. Again, it's not a scorecard, and we're looking more trends. It's not particularly current. This data we're looking at is from 2019 to 2024. The next batch of data will be on September 2026 through 2025. So runs kind of delayed, but that's fine for what it is in terms of comparative data. So we'll look at some big picture, then we'll look at some individual items as well. Overall, the big picture, since 2019, we've had fewer children enter in foster care. So fewer children coming into foster care. As a result of that, all this certainly, you can see a connection. Fewer children are in foster care overall, and fewer children are being served in the system. We also see fewer children with the adoption as a goal, which in a lot of ways makes sense. You have fewer children, but fewer that could be served as that with that goal. Fewer children exiting to adoption, and a drop in children who are legally free for adoption. And legally free would mean that courts has terminated the rights of the parents, and now they become a ward of the state, so to speak. And so that's what legally free. So again, to recap, we have fewer children in foster care, fewer children in foster care overall, fewer entering, fewer being served in the system, fewer with adoption goal their permanency goal is adoption, fewer exiting to adoption, and a drop in legally free for adoption. So the takeaways, the system is smaller, fewer children are moving all the way through to adoption. And you think about that, you could ask several questions about it. That's what it's for, but there's no one right answer. It's supposed to make you think. But I'm reminded as I prepared for this presentation, Judge Michael Key, Troup County Juvenile Court Judge, has always said, and I used to work in Region 4 not with him literally, but in the region where he served. His quote, we want to be sure that every child is in care who needs to be in care, and not one child more. And so I mean, when I look at the overall data trend, I think perhaps we're getting closer to Judge Key's call, which would be very reassuring. But that's not to say that's true. That's just kind of an initial takeaway from that slide. So we'll go to slide 3. Who is in foster care? Most children in care are school-age children. They're elementary through high school, school-age children, teenagers. And since 2019, that stayed pretty consistent over time. And we continue to serve mostly school-age children and youth. That's really what we do. And the race and ethnic distribution of children in care aligns with the population of the state. So that's been very consistent as well. Slide 4, you'll see where children live. Children live primarily in family home environments, home-like settings. That's what we want. I know it's horrible to say. I do apologize. Although I did it on purpose, but no. But it's crack myself up. That's terrible. Children, you want them in a home-like setting, most similar to. You don't want the children to be institutionalized. I think we talked before about that's not the Marine Corps or whatnot. You don't want the children institutionalized. You want them in a home-like setting, home-like environment, and preferably closer to their community of origin, where they're very comfortable. And so most children in foster care are living with relatives, like their grandparents or aunts, which is again very home-like, familiar setting, or in a family foster home, which is good. So 8 out of 10 children in care are in that setting. A smaller number, about 1 in 10, are in group homes or in treatment settings. Often that would be your teenagers who are a little harder to find the foster home setting for, or they have behavioral issues or delinquency issues, other challenges that require us to use these other resources. So I know the chairman often asks what's our biggest challenge. One of our biggest challenges remains to be having a foster home-like setting for every child, including teens and those with behavior issues, other challenges, at home that can meet their needs. And so, but overall, I think 8 out of 10 certainly is the right trend we'd like to see. And on a kind of an addendum here, the national effort, there's a national effort from the federal government called a Home for Every Child initiative, which really, it's a really good title because it's about wanting to have at least one foster home available for every child who needs one. So that's a national initiative, fairly new. And it also aligns with our PIP pilot we talked about last time that we still are learning more information about. So I really can't give you an update today, but we can talk more about it as we learn more. We're having some meetings next week to learn even more about the PIP pilot, which is around making sure we have ample foster homes, also around prevention, make sure only children come to care, come into care, and permanency. So again, I think on slide 4 here, we're seeing what we'd like to see. 8 out of 10 children are in foster care. Yes, sir.
So 8 out of 10 are in individual homes.
Right.
1 out of 10 is in a group home. Is that what I?
Yes, sir.
Where's the other 10%?
That's on there somewhere. I can't see it. You could have, I mean, you could have children living on emancipated, live on their own.
Okay.
Different combinations, right? I don't have that, unfortunately, and I can't see it.
There is another.
Yeah, there's other places.
There's other categories.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You can have a hospital. You could be incarcerated. There's a lot of different.
They're subsets.
Yes, sir.
They're not like 10% in one.
Right. Yes, sir. Yeah, it's a variety of small subsets. Yes, sir. That could collectively be made.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Great question. Great question. So, so yeah, 8 out of 10 are in family settings, and again, using the federal initiative, we'd hope to see 10 out of 10 at some point being in a home-like setting. Slide 5, permanency plan. Every child who's in foster care, we have a plan for their permanency. About 54%, the goal is to return home, reunification, which is a lot of times the initial goal. About 23% have adoption as a goal. Again, there's other goals we talked before. Emancipation would be one of them, guardianship. There's a lot of other goals, but the 2 biggest ones when we look at AFCAR would be the reunification and adoption. As we talked earlier about legally free, not every child with adoption goal is legally ready for adoption. And so right now we have 1,167 children legally free for adoption that we're working to find a forever family for these legally free children.
1,167.
Yes, sir. And since 2019, we have fewer children overall reaching the adoption stage. Again, we have less children overall coming into care, so that would impact that. I think we're doing a better job finding relatives up front and doing custody or guardianship to relatives up front. So a lot of different factors there that would impact that. Again, there's no right or wrong. It's just, it helps you prompt and know where you are. It's a good snapshot on the journey, know where you are, and certainly see consistency is good. You want to move in some areas, but it just makes you ask questions. Slide 6, I think, is one we talked about before. It's time to exit. It's how long a child is in foster care before leaving foster care. It could be, again, going back home, could be being adopted, could be custody to relative, could be emancipated, whatever it is, the time to exit. And nationally, the average is 710 days, which was about 2 years. And the goal is really 12 months is the goal, but on national average, it's 710 days. But as I said earlier, it doesn't tell us if it's necessarily good or bad, because a lot of different factors that are involved there. The time needed for families to safely reunify, you have a lot of substance abuse issues, and relapse is a part of healing. And so you're going to have to build that into some of your planning when you're looking at that. Legal steps, you have a lot of, it's not something we just do, right? A lot of different lawyers and judges, and you got dockets and court, a lot of different components to make it work. And then you have to ask yourself, do prevention efforts. If it takes longer to get a child to care, that may mean that we're only bringing into care children who have, or families with more severe needs. So it's harder to do that. So the easiest way mathematically to bring this number down would be to bring a lot of kids into care for a short period of time and send them home. But hopefully you're catching those families on the prevention side that never need to come into care, which also that kind of fits into our earlier data point around we have less kids coming into care. So I mean, my hypothesis would be if some of this, not just for Georgia, we'll look at Georgia, but nationally, is if it's taking a little longer to get children out of care, probably means we're having some more serious issues than we did when they first created the 12-month time frame. And we're doing a better job of not bringing a lot of kids into care unnecessarily. And so those children being served on the front end, the children coming into care are more difficult situations. And then we talked before, you have increased teens, behavioral issues, other challenges too that you have that we're not necessarily designed. We weren't designed to handle that. So we're having to kind of adapt and lean on partners and whatnot to do that. So
that's what the data seems to suggest. What's your gut feel? Do you think that's right?
Yes, sir.
Your explanation?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
That's a great thing then.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. I really do. Cause I mean, I've been doing this for almost 30 years, and the children that we brought into foster care when I was a caseworker it's a different dynamic than what you see today. It's much harder. The situation's harder. We used to use the analogy, the bucket of options. Families have their bucket of options are much thinner than they were, and the community options sometimes are thinner. So I think it's children coming to care day. It's a harder case. It's a harder dynamic. We're still seeing success. Children still go home. We're still dedicated to that. But I think it's a harder, and I think we'd have a better job preventing kids unnecessarily. Where we may have put a kid in care for 2 or 3 months in the past and send them home. I think you handle that differently now. But the behavior issues are real. It's a real challenge, and it really is. So we look at Georgia. We have about 807 days on average. So we're about 100 days over the national average. Our median's about 609, which is pretty consistent with the national average. Again, the federal goal is 12 months for unification, 24 months to adoption. Children may stay longer on average, but as we mentioned, it's on a case by case reason. There's no hard time frame. At this point, you take off. At this point, it's every case is different. All this data is case specific data brought together, all kind of congregate bringing it together. So every case is different. Every scenario is different. And,
But you're saying 24 months to adoption, right?
yes, sir.
And what was it a year ago, 2 years ago, whatever? You got a feel for that?
I think we've always done fairly well with that, but I think we're having a harder time to have less kids coming into care, less kids going to adoption. So I think we're having a harder to place in some ways, harder to adopt in some ways. But I'll get that for you. I don't want to speculate. That's just hypothesizing. I will get that for you, sir. If I might be in. And this may be I know we talked a little before about that. We'll do some more adoption data. Again, children may stay a little longer on average, but the reasons may vary. And
you say the reasons vary, but is there any common denominator with the reasons? I mean, you said all, so is there duplications in any of this? Are they all the same? I mean, all different or what?
well, I mean, again, this data is just a cumulative individual case specific stuff put together.
Okay.
It's not all this data is congregate. It kind of comes together from different pieces. You do know, I mean, we do know we have less kids coming into care.
Got it.
Right. We know that, but we only can assume what that means. I'm assuming based on my experience, based on what I've read and see, that we're doing a better job. As Judge Key had charged us to do, of only putting children in care who truly need to be in care. But if you have only serious situations of children coming to care that are more serious, it's harder to get them out of care. And so I think that's what we've seen over time. I think we've had, right now we have 9,590 children in care, which is very low compared to what we've been. We've been much, much higher than that in the past. We're doing a better job of serving what I would say the easy exit, so to speak. The children who would be an easy exit out of foster care, we're not bringing them into foster care. We're serving them outside of foster care, which brings the core foster care much harder families and situations to find success with. And so
then we also have X amount that's aging out of foster
we
care.
do. Yes, sir.
So is that up, down, or what?
I think our children who are aging out, we're doing a much better job. I know we talked before about that, much better job of serving that population. And we had Don J. Calhoun come and talk to the board at one point. Again, 30 years ago, it was good luck, it aged out, and our kids would run away and would, go get dismissed of custody back then, or, to go join the Job Corps. And we're doing a much better job serving children. And so I would say it's been fairly consistent, but it's more than we had in the past of after children who stay into care. It's a paradigm shift. At one point, you had to make a case to stay in care. Now you're kind of by default stay in care unless you make the case to leave care. Right. So I don't think children leaving care is not we have a lot of progress to make in that. And that's really a vulnerable population. But I think we're much more aware and much more focused on that. And the federal government is as well than we were 10, 20, 30 years ago. So I think that's certainly trending in the right direction. We can get you more on that as well. I mean, Don J is a real.
Certainly don't want them out of foster care and then homeless.
Right. No, exactly.
That's not an answer to this.
Right. Not at all.
And if we're not coming through this, even though we have control over them through that period of time, There's sort of be some exit that they're able to function.
Right, exactly. And we'll get more on that for you. There's a lot of efforts we do, but we work with a lot of our faith-based partners. There's a network out there doing a lot of good work on making sure what you mentioned doesn't happen, that these children just don't come up on the street.
So it takes, your data says 24 months to get adopted. We got 10,000 kids on the rolls, right? In foster care, a little bit less than
We've
that.
got, 9,000, almost,
Pretty
yes,
close.
yes, sir.
All right. And so on average of the ones that are available to be adopted, is that the number of 24 months it takes to get adopted? Or is it longer than that on average?
24 months is the goal. Right now, we have 1,167 children free for adoption.
All right. And so you said 24 months was the goal.
Yes, sir.
So what is the result? How quick do kids that are ready to be adopted get adopted?
Yeah, I don't have that where I can speak to it today, but I'll get that for you, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, I want to ask, how are we doing with hotel residency temporarily for them? Are we still heavily depending on hotels?
It's not heavily dependent on like we were,
Yeah.
but it still happens on occasion. It's
About how much time?
I hate to speculate
Yeah.
without knowing it.
Yeah.
It's maybe a handful, maybe 10. I mean, I hate to speculate, but
Yeah.
often it's either, like I said earlier, it's either going to be it's not a lack of resources of a home. It's a behavioral challenge that we working to get them into a treatment facility. They can't take them today, so maybe take them Monday, or those resources are very limited. And so it's not parked and left. It's sometimes used as a stopgap, so to speak, as we get children in other scenarios, right?
These hotels, do they have security? Have you
Well,
verified
right,
the security?
right. We have, also we have behavior aides who will be with the children, make sure that they're, so they're not just in a hotel by themselves having a good time.
Oh, I know
right?
that, but,
Right.
yeah, okay. And, these hotels, do they reserve rooms, in case one comes in and then charge defects for reserving those empty rooms until they get, children on?
Not to my knowledge, but
Okay.
I haven't heard that, so
I've heard it.
okay,
And I don't
I'll make a
want
note
to
of
believe
that.
it, but
Right. I mean, I have heard of a facility that we may hold a bed for us and charge us for the child to get there, the
Yeah.
facility, but a hotel I've not heard, but I will follow up on that.
okay.
We certainly don't
Thank
need to
you.
be doing that. That's certainly not something we can be
I
doing.
want to add a follow-up question. Chairman Smith, this is 24 months for adoption. Is there, my concern is is something holding it up from moving faster? Is it the legal system? Is it Superior Court? What? Can you add that to?
Getting on the docket of Superior Court
Yeah,
judges. 'cause they're the only ones
what
that-
holds it up?
Right, yeah, and I'll get all that for you. There's the same issues we mentioned up front. Sometimes you have an obvious, this case is going to adoption based on the severity of the situation. You don't even work reunification based on the severity of some situations that brought the kid into care. But otherwise, if you weren't, you'd be working reunification and trying to make sure you're providing adequate services, and you have to have the juvenile court find termination of rights. And sometimes they're hesitant to do that because they've had several overturns, so they want to make sure it's really a solid case, and it should be. I mean, it's a serious thing to terminate someone's parental rights.
I think that'd be good at that and follow up what Chairman Smith asked.
Right, yes, sir.
Add to that.
Yes, sir. But we certainly don't want it to linger. I mean, that's what I'm hearing you say, right? We don't want it to linger, and I totally agree with you. So that was a simple takeaway. Less kids coming to care, but I think we're bringing harder to serve families, harder to serve children. We're still having reunification at a good steady clip, but I think we're doing a better job finding relatives. So a lot of different components that we see. And again, I think substance abuse is very prevalent. And that's something that you have to have clean screens and follow, and the juvenile courts are really consistent about that we can push the timeline down. And then, as I mentioned earlier, even someone who's really doing a good job with trying to stay clean, relapse is a part of that process. It's going to happen. It's going to reset the clock back and move towards. So it's very serious. But like I mentioned earlier, all of it is at its core is we have policy and practice, but all of it's individualized. So we make sure we're doing the right work for each individual family and child. And that's what we strive to do with your support.
You mentioned partners that help with how many do we have? Do we have, is it 5, 10, 20, or is it, churches? What is it? Or
It's a whole network. I don't want to throw a number because I'm sure I will undercut. There's more than I'm probably going to be able to say, but we'll get that for you in terms of like the children exiting care.
yes, and and the agencies that assist us with this.
Right. Yeah. We'll
How
get
many
that.
do we have? I mean, is it we're shortage of it? We need more? What?
It's a solid network and, but we always need more. And I think you always, and so, working with churches to build that network of support up. And it's also multi-tiered. So maybe this group helps with housing or financial. This we're trying to get with, this group maybe helps with tuition. Who can you turn to for a support and mentor, mental health services. So it's a whole network, but I'll get that for you. We'll get that for you. Yes, sir. So there's a lot to this work and it's an honor to be a part of it. A lot to this work and in the next, move to the next slide. March was Social Work Month. So I know we're in April, but March was Social Work Month, and just want to stop and recognize all the hard work that our social workers do, case managers, our providers, our cohorts, our faith-based community. The Social Work Month, the hard work that people do in social work to help. Want to recognize our case managers and everyone in the child welfare program. We want to highlight two social workers, but I want to thank all of our staff for the hard work they do. We got Miss Winifred. I won't read her comment, but she's been highlighted as a key social work spotlight. Then we have Miss Nicole as well. And so I want to thank them, and again, thank everybody on the team for their dedication and their work. So, and I want to thank you too as well. You're a big part of it as well.
Great.
So thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. So next, Mary Lee. Hello, good morning. Good afternoon.
Hello, Chairman Smith. Good to see you and members of the
How are you?
board. I think you know me by now.
Yes, ma'am.
But I'm excited to talk with you today about something that is super important to the work that we do. It's actually a requirement, and I'm excited to kind of explain all of that and also hopefully get you all involved today as well. So we're going to be talking about the state plan on aging. And if you'll go to the next slide, please. So I think that you are familiar with our vision and mission, but we really are all about assisting older adults, families, and their caregivers, and persons with disabilities to lead self-reliant lives, to live in the community. And that's where we focus our work. And today I'm going to tell you about the process that each state unit on aging across the country does. And it really helps us define our mission and vision every time we go through this process. And it's a time that we're reevaluating that. We're reevaluating our goals, and our state plan really acts as our guidepost, and it's our focus. It sets the goals for our statewide aging network, and that's why I have the slide as it is here, because our mission and vision actually drives the mission and vision of all of our 12 area agencies on aging. So it's interesting, if you read our mission and vision, then you go to each of their websites, you'll see that they very much align, and that makes sense because we are creating the aging network in Georgia. And so if you'll go to the next slide, this gives you the 100,000 foot level. So I always think it's important to go back and zoom out and explain to you why we do this and the importance of it. So the Older Americans Act of 1965 actually laid the foundation for what is now known as the Aging Services Network across the country. And so, as you can see here, the Administration for on Aging actually sits within the Administration for Community Living, which is in HHS. And ACL designates the state units on aging. So every state and the 6 territories all have a state unit on aging. So there's 56 of them across the country. And then, of course, we administer the rules and the funding down to our planning and service areas, which are called the area agencies on aging. And then they contract with local service providers. So if you'll just do one more click on that slide for me, you'll see that the primary really role of the state unit on aging is to develop the state plan on aging, because it literally drives all of the work that we do. And so ACL sets forth the guidance on that, and I'm going to tell you more about that today. So ACL provides direction to states in, with broad areas that we must incorporate in our state plan. And in a recent memo to directors, myself, ACL laid out the purpose of the state plan. It's to document the tangible outcomes expected from state long-term care reform efforts. It translates activities, data, and outcomes into proven best practices, which can be used to leverage additional funding. It provides a blueprint for coordination and advocacy activities the state will undertake to meet the needs of older adults, including integrating health and social services delivery systems. And it builds capacity for long-term care efforts in the state. So states are given the choice to develop a new state plan for a 2, 3, or 4-year period, and Georgia has chosen the 4-year cycle. And we're all on different years, so it's not like they're approving, it's not like everybody's in the same cycle. So that way ACL has time to spread out their approval of those 56 plans. So, whereas some state plans I think can be developed and sit on a shelf, ours is actually utilized every day because it sets forth our goals and objectives. And it really measures our success. And it drives the area agencies on aging area plans, as I mentioned, and their mission and vision. So our current state plan will soon be in its last fiscal year, starting July 1st of 2026. And our current state plan is posted and available on our DHS website. This is exciting for me because I started in March of 2022. And so our plan was already developed and it really was in the final draft. It had to go through the final comment period and then go to the governor for signature. So I wasn't part of this phase that we're going through now. And so I'm very excited to be here to lead this work this time. And as you can imagine, last time the planning period was throughout COVID. And so, we didn't have as much public input, I think, as we would have liked because of some of those limitations of not being able to have the public input meetings in person. So if you'll go to the next slide, please. As I said, ACL requires that we develop our plan utilizing statewide data, program data, and public input. And as well, new in this cycle, as written in a recent update to the Older Americans Act regulations, the area agencies on aging area plans also have to inform our work. So it's really like a nice circle instead of being one way as it was before. So as you can see from this slide, we already have well-established ways to gain public feedback, both statewide and at the regional level. We do annual assessments. The AAAs do annual needs assessments. The AAAs have aging advisory councils that provide them feedback on the greatest needs in their regions. And then also the AAAs do customer satisfaction surveys on the services they provide. And as well, we do a statewide survey annually. And then of course, we are continuously doing data analysis of our programs as well that will provide us feedback to the next state plan development. But on the top, you see public input meetings. Those are a required part of this work. And we have just kicked those off. We had our first one yesterday. So, and of course, in addition to the public input that we receive, we're also using a great deal of our existing data, as well as we have access to great census and health data from multiple sources in the state. So all of that is coming together to help us inform our next state plan. If you'll go to the next slide, please. So as I mentioned, every year, every few years, ACL actually updates their state plan development guidance to ensure alignment with federal administration goals. So ACL held webinars in late 2024 and sent out that memo I mentioned to you in 2025, updating the guidance. And what you see here are the required content areas for the plan. And so you'll see we have to have an executive summary, context, and we do have to address stewardship and oversight of funding in that summary. And then our key topic areas this cycle include 4 things. Number 1 is goals on each of the OAA core programs, which are our Older Americans Act programs. Number 2 is ensuring programs are accessible to the people in greatest economic need and greatest social need. So targeting services to those that meet the SUA's definition of greatest economic need and greatest social need. And then number 3 is expanding access to home and community-based services. ACL recognizes that the home and community-based services network is essential to aging in place. And so we are to promote the development and implementation of a state system of long-term care that is comprehensive and coordinated. And number 4 is enhancing services and supports for caregivers. So advancing our state's ability to both recognize and support caregivers. And next slide, please. The next slide is going to give you actually our timeline. So this is pretty much almost a 2-year process. I'm missing a page. I don't know. Oh, he has it. So it must just, oh, this one, actually, sorry, this one wasn't supposed to be printed, so it goes to the next one. Yeah. But you do have the goals from the old plan if you want to review them there in your slide deck. So we actually started before this timeline begins here because we held last fall an initial brainstorm retreat for our key Older Americans Act staff to go through like our existing plan, what we think we're kind of brainstorming on gaps, where we could improve not only the plan, but the process to get information for the plan. So we began that last fall, and we also in October facilitated a meeting with our Area Agency on Aging directors and their key staff with a facilitator for a several-hour brainstorming session, going over a quality improvement review, process review, and our current plan. We also established our timeline and our communication plan with the AAAs. And we also have contracted again this cycle with UGA's Carl Vinson Institute for Government to help us with the public input meetings. So they're actually leading those public input meetings to be a neutral party driving those conversations. And they'll be analyzing the data that is collected and reviewing the AAA's area plans, and then putting together a great summary for us to build from. So here's a look at where we are in the process and some important target dates that we have ahead of us. As I mentioned, we had our first community conversation, is what we're calling them, in our Legacy Link or Georgia Mountains Area Agency on Aging yesterday in Oakwood. We had about 60 people turn out, and we had some great discussion. So really good first event. These will continue through June 24th. So we've got 3 months of the community conversations. And in addition, we're planning for some virtual events for those who cannot attend an event in person in May. And so we are nailing down the details of those now. There is also a way to provide input online via a survey. So if somebody can't do either of those options, they can provide their feedback on a survey. And then, as I said here on the timeline, CBI will conduct their analysis of all of the information received, And in July, they will be presenting a summary of those findings to our area agencies on aging. And we'll conduct another of our joint meetings with the AAAs to draft goals for the plan. And then we have to have a draft plan ready by December of 2026 because the draft has to be submitted to ACL for review and feedback. And of course, our AAAs will be reviewing the draft as well. And then we do have to have another final public review of the final draft, a public hearing, and a 30-day period for people to give us feedback on the final draft of the next plan. And it will have to be to the governor's desk for signature by June 1st, so that we could submit it to ACL by June 30th. So as you can see, we have a busy 14 months ahead of us. And we really are hopeful that you all will also participate, either in an event or a survey. And so I brought flyers for you on our community conversation. If you'll go to the next slide, please.
You have all the dates that those are gonna happen?
We do.
That's
If you
good.
just
Can you
go to
go
the
there?
website,
Okay,
you
good.
can
Thank you for that.
go down the list and see where the one near you will be happening.
Sure.
And on what date. And you can actually register right there on the website.
That's good.
And so if you'll go to the next slide, that was what I was going to mention is we have a great website developed by our comms team where you can get access to the survey. You can also RSVP for any of the in-person events and register for those. You don't have to register, but it's helpful for us to have a head count if you register in advance. Yesterday we had 59 registered and we ended up with 60 there. So there were people who showed up that had not registered, and then we had some who had registered that didn't show up. So it really evened out to 60. So our next community conversation event is actually April 23rd from 10 to 12 in Northwest Georgia. That one will be held in Rome, and you'll see there that's how the preview looks on the website. So you can use the QR code to get to that webpage. And I would love for you to share that out where you live in your communities to people who might want to submit some feedback to us. So on the next slide, it just sort of summarizes the roadmap on how we're going to get to our next state plan. And that state plan will drive us from 2028 to 2031. It's kind of hard to imagine, right? To think to 2031, but we're really looking forward to this and excited about the work ahead. And then one last slide for you is just to make you aware that May is Older Americans Month. And you'll see that ACL's theme this year ties to the Make America Healthy Again agenda, and it's Champion Your Health. So that's the theme for May. And that is all I have for you today. If you guys will take one of these and pass them down, and if you want more to pass out in your community, I would love to share those so you can have some more.
Thank you, Mary.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Hurst, Division of Child and Support Services.
Good afternoon, Chair Smith and board members. Y'all are doing well today. I am Sarah Hurst. I serve as the Assistant Deputy Commissioner for Child Support Services. And today I'll be presenting some information about how we process intergovernmental cases, which are cases that we share with other states or other countries. So I don't think this is a topic we've touched on much. So hopefully y'all will find it interesting as I did as we prepared this information. So as you all know, the DHS vision is Stronger Families for a Stronger Georgia. And our mission at the Division of Child Support Services is to enhance the well-being of children by locating non-custodial parents, establishing paternity, establishing, enforcing, and modifying support obligations, and of course, collecting and distributing child support payments to families. So our work centers around increasing the reliability of child support payments that are made by parents when they live apart from their children. So on this slide, you can see some of our program data. Just as a reminder, the authority for our program is based on Title IV, Section D of the Social Security Act. And the majority of our funding comes from the Federal Office of Child Support Enforcement, with the remaining portion coming from appropriated state funds. And then we also receive some additional funds from grants that we have been awarded. Our program is state-run and state-administered, and we have 55 local offices throughout the state that are divided into 10 regions. The services that we provide are based on judicial circuits, which aligns with the authority provided to the superior court judges with whom we work. On the next slide, we'll take a look at our case types. So while the majority of the cases that we handle are considered in-state or sometimes referred to as intrastate cases, where typically both parents live in Georgia, we do have a large number of cases which are considered intergovernmental. And so there's a few different categories. So we have interstate cases. Those are cases where one parent is here in Georgia and the other parent is in another state. And then we also have international cases where one parent is here in Georgia and the other parent is in another country. So I'll dive a little bit deeper into that as we go along. Once the need for an interstate case has been identified, the initiating state must complete the required documents and send them to the other state to request their assistance. That state, the state that initiates the request is known as the initiating state, and then the state that receives the request is referred to as the responding state. So you'll hear me mention those terms a few times. An initiating state relies on the responding state to take the necessary actions on the child support case to move it forward in the process and to ultimately ensure that the child receives the support that they need from the non-custodial parent. So when Georgia is the initiating state, we stay in close contact with the responding state to check on status updates regularly and to provide any necessary information or documentation they may need from us to proceed. The responding state, which again is the state who receives a request from another state, they must accept and process the case to the extent that they can, even while following up with the initiating state if they do need any additional documentation or information. So they must treat any case that they receive from another state just as they would an in-state case. They can't treat it any differently. So just as an example, let's say we have a custodial parent here in Georgia and the non-custodial parent moves to Texas. So we could reach out to the state of Texas and ask for their assistance with establishing paternity, a support order if needed, or enforcing or modifying that order. So we'll explore this process in the next few slides. So on the next slide, the Uniform Interstate Family Support Act, or UIFSA 2008, is the primary law to facilitate activity in interstate cases. Each state was required by Congress to pass UIFSA, which provides a common framework for interstate establishment, enforcement, and modification of support obligations to increase consistency across state lines. UIFSA acknowledges that certain laws vary from state to state, such as child support guidelines and emancipation ages, and provides principles that identify which law is applicable to different aspects of the case. UIFSA also provides for enforcement of orders through direct income withholding. So that allows an income withholding order to be sent directly to an employer in another state without having to involve that other state child support program. So following the example earlier, if we do have a non-custodial parent who moves to Texas and there's an order for support, but we know his employer's information, we can go ahead and send an income withholding notice to that employer so that we can get collections for that case and for that family. So the second bullet on this slide highlights some national data around interstate cases. So as shown, the number of national interstate child support cases is significant, and partnerships among state child support programs are critical to ensure that children here in Georgia and across the nation are receiving the support they need. So next, we'll take a look at some of our caseload data. So during federal fiscal year 2025, we managed over 282,000 cases, and we collected over $659 million for families during that year. And this supported over 389,000 children. As of the latest rankings that are nationally available, Georgia had the 10th highest caseload as well as the 10th highest collections in the nation. And you can see a heat map on the right side of this slide showing the overall child support caseloads among the states as of federal fiscal year 2024. And that's, again, the latest national data that's available. So those shaded darkest have the highest child support caseloads. Out of our entire caseload, over 60,000 cases, or approximately 21%, are cases that we share with another state. We also have 265 cases that we share with another country. So next, we will take a look at our initiating caseload. So while our total caseload is ranked 10th in the nation, for interstate cases, we actually rank in the top 5. So for cases where Georgia is the initiating state, and again, that's where the custodial parent and the child or children live here in Georgia, and the non-custodial parent is in another state, we rank 5th highest based on the 2024 data, meaning we send the 5th highest number of cases to other states requesting their assistance in establishing, enforcing, or modifying child support orders. So for 2024, that involved almost 30,000 cases. And just as a comparison, because I know we like to see how we compare to other states, both Tennessee and Missouri had similar total caseload sizes to Georgia, but they ranked 12th and 13th for the number of cases they sent to other states. So we had more parents that were living in multiple states than they did. So you can see a heat map of this data. Those states, again, with the darker colors have the highest number of interstate cases sent to other states. And on the next slide, you'll see a heat map that shows the cases that we, Georgia, have sent to other states for assistance. So I loved that my team put this together. Our largest initiating partner is Florida with over 5,100 cases. No surprise since they're right next door. And the smallest is actually Vermont with 17 cases that we have in common. On the next slide, we'll take a look at our responding cases. So for cases where we are responding to another state's request, we rank 4th in the nation. And for 2024, this involved over 32,000 responding cases. Again, for comparison, Tennessee and Missouri ranked 11th and 13th for this. You can also see a heat map of this data, and those states, again, with the darker colors, have the highest number of interstate cases received from other states. And next, we'll take a brief look at the cases we share with other countries. So while our international caseload is much smaller, it still represents an important part of our work. So as mentioned earlier in the presentation, we share 265 cases with other countries. Germany is actually our largest international partner, and Canada is the 2nd largest. The Federal Office of Child Support Enforcement is committed to helping states overcome the challenges of electronic international payments to eliminate paper checks. The federal office created the Central Authority Payment Service, or it's referred to as CAP. We have lots of acronyms. And this process helps state child support agencies send payments electronically to other countries. So we can use the automated clearinghouse or ACH process to send payments to the CAP program, and then they forward those payments to the foreign child support authorities. I'm happy to report Georgia assisted as one of the pilot states for this process, and it was a very beneficial process in working with the federal office on this. And it brings a lot of benefits to us because it makes the payment process to those other countries much easier and takes some work off of our team in that respect. So there are several countries already participating, including our largest international partner, Germany, so that's great. And the federal office is always educating additional countries on this program and encouraging them to participate, so that list is growing. Next, we'll take a look at collections. So as mentioned earlier, we collected over $659 million for families in federal fiscal year 2025. So for cases where Georgia is the initiating state, and again, that's where the custodial parent and child are here in Georgia, we have the 3rd highest incoming collections from other states at over $69 million. For cases where we are responding to other states, we have the 5th highest collections out of all states with over $65 million sent to other states. And then for cases that we share with other countries, we rank 7th highest for collections sent to other countries with over $748,000. So these cases can be unique and sometimes can be complex. So we want to ensure our staff have the resources and tools they need to be able to manage these cases. So on the next slide, I wanted to share some information on those resources and the training available to our team. So the Federal Office of Child Support Enforcement operates the Federal Parent Locator Service, which is an invaluable locate and enforcement resource across state lines. It includes 2 federal databases, the National Directory of New Hires and the Federal Case Registry, and that helps facilitate interstate case processing. The federal office also provides the Federal Child Support Portal, which allows states to send and receive vital information concerning child support cases. It provides a fast and effective way of sharing case-specific data in a secure environment. So through the portal, our child support team can view real-time data about cases in other states, so cases we have in common. They can also exchange child support documents and intergovernmental forms that are needed for case processing in a secure environment. So instead of having to send it through the mail, it's a much faster process. It's a secure process that we use. And they can also get direct contact information for other state child support workers, which is really helpful when you need to get in contact with someone in that other state. In addition to all the resources at the federal level, we also have a robust training program for our employees. So we have a wonderful DCSS training and professional development team, and they offer an intergovernmental training module as part of our agents training program that they are required to go through. We also offer supplemental training on a variety of topics, but one of those topics is intergovernmental case processing. And we have different avenues for our employees to get that training. We have some short sessions that are offered periodically throughout the year called Knowledge Bites. So they're just little quick training opportunities that are really great for our team to join and learn about a specific topic. And then we also have several self-paced e-learnings available at any time if an employee needs a refresher on a topic or just wants to learn more. So those are some great opportunities. In addition to what we have here in Georgia, there's several opportunities at the national level. So there's national child support organizations. They offer webinars, conferences, committees, different ways to connect with those in other states and other countries and to learn from each other and learn best practices. In addition, I'm a member of the National Council of Child Support Directors. So my peers in all the other states, we connect on at least a monthly basis, sometimes more frequently, and share what's going on in our states, learn from each other. It's a wonderful community. So I wanted to share a couple of success stories around these types of cases with you all today. So our Albany Intergovernmental Hub collected over $148,000 on a case that we shared with Texas. This was a case where the custodial parent and the child were here in Georgia. And Texas had placed a lien on land that the non-custodial parent had inherited. So when he later sold that land, the proceeds were intercepted for the child support that he owed. That payment actually paid the past due arrears off in full on the case, and that case is now closed. So that was a wonderful thing for the family. On another case, also managed through our Albany Intergovernmental Hub, one of our agents there, Kenyatta Frazier, achieved a lump sum payment of over $38,000 in order to release a non-custodial parent's passport, and that payment also paid that case off in full, and that case is also now closed. So those are just two examples of where we've partnered with other states for their assistance when the non-custodial parent has lives out of state, and we were able to assist the family with getting the support needed. So I'm very proud of our team's work in all areas, but in this area as well. So it not only provides support for the children here in Georgia, but also those children who may live in another state or country. So thank you all so much for your time today, and I'm happy to take any questions.
I have a question. How much does citizenship count in that? For example, if a non-custodial parent is a citizen of this country, and then they have the custodial parent, maybe the mother, in another country that is not a citizen, does that come into play at all?
Not for the child support program. So
Okay.
we are not required to report on citizenship to the federal government. We're not required to collect that information. And our program differs from some other federal programs since any payments that come through our program are made by one parent to the other parent. So instead of it being like a federal benefit that's paid out based on different eligibility criteria, any payments that we collect and then disperse to the family are payments that were made by that other parent. So it's a little bit different.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So since our last meeting in January, in February, I had a chance to attend Judge Ann Harris's parental accountability court
Yes.
in Cobb County.
Wonderful.
Well worth the time if you all, I know some of you have done it, I'm sure, but well worth the time to do that and see the success stories that our department has a role in. So I just want to thank you and the people that work with you for that, because obviously we depend on our Superior Court judges.
Absolutely.
To take that on districts, but it's great to see something that works.
Yes.
And the parental accountability courts really do work, and they not only benefit the people on the receiving end, they change the lives from people on the parent that's making the payments, so.
They really do. And I mentioned this just earlier this week. I was told at some point, it's been some years now, that for some of the parents we work with, they've never had an opportunity in their life to be recognized for something. So sometimes the Parental Accountability Court graduation is the very first time they're receiving some type of certificate or acknowledgement. And when I was told that, that really touched my heart, because that was just something I hadn't thought of. So, you know, those events are very special, and it really is one of our favorite days, getting to see parents that have overcome so many barriers. And it's wonderful that we're able to have a role in that, as well as the partnership with the Superior Court judges. So thank you for mentioning that. I forget where I was that day, but I couldn't go to that graduation. And I do try to go, and we do have one coming in Fulton County. I don't have the date on me, but I think that appointment is coming out, so I think we share those with you.
Well, there was a staff member there. So.
Yes, of course. But yes, we love that program, and I love to hear all the success stories out of
Okay, good. Thank you so much.
it. Thank you.
You bet. Now is time for a break, unless we don't need it.
We do.
We need a break. All right, well, you cut that down really quick. All right, can we say 10 minutes?
Yeah.
10 minutes? At 3:10, we'll resume.
Yeah, that's,
So, we'll just move on. First of all, administrative reports gonna be given by General Counsel Byron Culberth, right?
Cuthbert, sir.
Oh, sorry. Okay, Culberth.
Like the town.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, absolutely. And then I think, Steve, you're gonna come and share with us the second one.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. All right, and then we'll just go all the way through from the first one to the rule change and go and just be done with that one. And then we'll start with you after that. Okay. All right, so thank you for being here. What's your favorite moment of this meeting so far?
Actually hearing about UIFSA.
Okay.
I'm very excited about this because this took a lot of work.
Yes.
So.
All right, good, good. And just so everybody else's perspective, how long you been working on this one particular rule check?
I would say we did it for about a year. It's a year. We did several revisions, went through several drafts. We talked to several agents, talked to several attorneys. It was a long process.
We appreciate your patience and your hard work on this.
Yes.
So I'll just jump right into it. The board will now consider the proposed rule change. Or did you want to make any comments on it before I go?
Yeah, I was gonna
Okay.
give you a brief presentation.
Okay, let's do that. All right.
So I'm Byron Cuthbert. I'm the Associate General Counsel of Sign of Child Support. Basically today, we're gonna go over basically getting the motion for final adoptions of these proposed rules. The roadmap is where I'll give you guys a brief summary of the rule change procedures, do a summary of all the rules, report what we've heard back from the comment period, and then request you, the board, to finally consider the motion. Next slide, please. So the rule change procedure is a pretty interesting process. First in January, you, the board, considered a motion to publish proposed rules. Then in January and February, we did a 30-day public comment period, and we had a public hearing. And we're here today for step 4, which is the motion for final adoption of proposed rules. After this motion, if you all approve it, we will be sending these final rules to the Secretary of State for publishing.
Good. Good. You'll have a celebration service tonight.
Yes,
right?
I will.
Okay,
Yes,
good.
I will. So as we were still talking about earlier, these rules are basically the most revisions or biggest amendments to the rules for child support in almost 10 years. We did a lot of revisions to align the language with the current Georgia law that covers things like the Child Support Recovery Act, Child Support Guidelines, and our federal 4D regulations. We reflected some terminology to update with the new statutes that were passed. For example, we added low-income adjustments and parenting time adjustments because those were just updated in the Child Support Guidelines and became effective January 1st of 2026. We also updated some terminology by changing it from income deduction to income withholding because that aligned with our bill that we passed, an agency bill that we passed in 2024. And then we just updated and clarified a lot of procedures and terminology.
Was there any changes from what you presented prior, when we authorized for the hearings? Was there any changes from the hearings and everything? And did anybody attend the hearings? That's the next question. Did
That's the
anybody
next-
come offer any comments?
That's the next slide, actually, sir. And no, so we did have the public hearing. We published it the day after, we did a motion.
Right.
And we did it from public comment from January 8th through February 7th. And then we had a public hearing where we held for about 2 hours on January 13th. We had no comments and no objections. So we were clear. We were clear.
Clear.
Yes.
We've already gone all over all that. And he said, okay, and okay, got it.
We're clear. So because of that, the next slide, please. We're basically here, like I said, to request you, the board, to consider the motion for final adoption to updating and amending the DCSS rule set.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, the board will now consider the proposed rule change from the Division of Child Support Services related to adoption.
Point of order, are the board meeting now? Did you call the board
It's
together?
official.
Or are we, he's giving a report, so I mean, is our agenda
Okay,
started for the board business?
yes, so be it.
All right.
All those in favor?
We're now in
You need a
order.
gavel.
Okay. Call us to order, sir.
The board is now in session. All right, very good. So now I'll start over again. The board will now consider, thank you though. The board will now consider the proposed rule change from the Division of Child Support Services related to the adoption of amendments to Rule Chapter 290-7, Office of Support of Child Support Recovery, Rules 290-7-1-.01 through 290-7-1-.20, collectively referred to as Recovery and Administration of Child Support of the rules of the Georgia Department of Human Services. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move the proposed amendments to Rule Chapter 290-7, Office of Child Support Recovery, Rules 290-7-1-.01 through 290-7-1-.02, collectively referred to as the Recovery and Administration of Child Support of the rules of the Georgia Department of Human Services, as presented by the public notice dated January 7, 2026, be approved and adopted, certified by the Commissioner, and filed with the Secretary of State as provided by law with an effective date of May 4, 2026.
Mr. Chairman, I so move, or second the motion, sir.
Wonderful, thank you. It is moved and properly seconded that the proposed rule changes from the Division of Child Support Services be approved and adopted. Is there any discussion? We shall now take a vote. The proposed amendments of the division, or all those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed? Ayes have it. So the proposed amendments by the Division of Child Support Services rules are hereby adopted by the Board of Human Services. So thank you for your hard work, and you can go have a celebration.
I will. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you all. Thank you.
All right. Come on up.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to ask Ms. Marva Walker, our Deputy Director of Program Operations
Sure.
from the program area, to be allowed to join me up here.
Absolutely. All right.
Thank you. You are okay.
All right, so do you want to tell us about your rule change, C?
About what?
You want to tell us about your rule change?
I got some highlights
Okay, that'd be
prepared, if
great.
that's okay.
Okay, sure.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you, Chairman Smith, board members. Good to be with you here today. Next slide. And next slide. Next slide.
Going pretty good.
Yeah, next slide. And you saw Mr. Cuthbert, you saw this slide earlier. We are at step one in this process, whereas he was well more advanced in his proposed rule change. Next slide, please. Briefly, why we decided to revise these rules. First of all, we wanted to clarify these rule provisions, modernize terminology. It's been quite some time since these rules were revisited. We want to update the provisions to align with state law and streamlining regulations where these rules that we're proposing more closely align with the existing residential child care institution rules where there are provisions common to both. Next slide. So I will just highlight some of the highlights here for you. Rule 5. That first bullet is, I think, the most important. It aligns the covered crimes for purposes of background checks for employees and directors with the Code of Georgia 49-5-60. Previously, we listed out the covered crimes, but the legislature already gives us the covered crimes in this provision of the state law. So anytime the law changed, well, our regulation, our rule was inconsistent with the state law. By directing this, by pointing to the Georgia Code, we ensure that if the legislature changed the law, our rules are automatically changed, so there's no more inconsistencies. Next slide. Rule 6, the highlight here is that we require each geographical location have its own license. In other words, not just the parent organization has to be licensed, but if you have an organization that has a facility, 3 different locations around the state, we make it clear that each one of those locations has to have their own license individually rather than just the parent organization. Next slide. Yes.
Next, so one orders, just because the mother, so to speak, has a license, each individual branch has to have a license.
Yes, sir. That's correct. That is
That's what we're
correct.
talking about.
That's what we're talking about. Yes, sir.
Okay, that's good.
Going on to Rule 8 here, the highlight of this one is we did add a requirement, at least one employee at each mobile campsite and during any high-risk activities must have a current wilderness first responder certification. This certification goes above and beyond your regular first aid to deal with things like bites and stings, night rescue, heat, cold, things like that. Next slide. Rule 12, the highlight of this revision it clarifies that a program must have awake staff coverage at all times. In other words, one of the employees, one of the staff members must be awake at all times during the program. They can't all go to sleep at once. Next slide. Rule 16, we did some revising clarification here to basically make meals and snacks and the preparation thereof follow the USDA Child and Adult Care Food Program guidelines. And we added the sanitation, storage, handling of food requirements as recommended by the USDA as well.
All right, I understand it, but those services are they also inspected by a county or code enforcement also to have certification from the county? Does that change that, or they can be inspected by the Department of Health, let's say Richmond County to the group? They have to have that certificate also, correct? That doesn't change that.
That does not change. No, sir, it does. If when they're whatever county that location is in, they're serving food, they're subject to that county's health and food handling regulations as well. Next slide, please. Oh, well, thank you. We're there. Rule 17 was probably our most significant revision. Instead of a general buildings and grounds standard, which previously there was a requirement that the facility must have X number of acres per camper. Well, that does not, I don't know that does a lot necessarily. We updated this to add actual, safety requirements and to address issues that actually impact the health and safety of the campers. Like when you're camping outside, your sleeping bags have to be rated for the expected temperature, so you don't, get cold while you're sleeping. The campers' backpacks they have a weight limit based on the percentage of their body weight. So we're not overloading our campers with too heavy backpacks and injuring them. Next slide. Rule 20, we now requires the program to conduct at least 2 disaster rehearsals each year. And this is in addition to the existing fire drill requirements. But, because of, lots happened since these rules were last revisited. So some of the things that these 2 disaster rehearsals must cover things like tornado response, hurricanes, floods, tornadoes, earthquake, we even added for terrorism or hazardous material spills.
I'm curious about security of these camps due to the fact of, some knucklehead doing something stupid. How does that fall under the same coverage?
Actually, no, it doesn't. It's not something that's covered in our rules and regulations.
About security, in other words, there's nothing other than the supervisors. That's it. That's the security we have. That's it.
Correct, because these staff members, they aren't allowed to, they can protect for the health and safety of the youth, but they aren't allowed to carry weapons or any of those kinds of things. So if something happens, they're contacting with radio or telephone, the local law enforcement. So
that's it. So, but we're not requiring the camp to have security.
Is that something y'all consider?
Does that, yeah, would that be so, yeah, because I
That
know
is something
every-
we can
every
definitely
church-
consider.
Every church is like that now. We have security and even the daycare centers.
Yes.
And even playgrounds around private schools all have screens where no one can see. I mean, you know, see the kids.
Yes.
Is that, I mean, is that something we need to look at also?
I think we can look at it. I think we have to realize too, we're on, public land and we need to see what those regulations are from maybe DNR, Department of Natural
So the
Resources,
camp
to see what
itself
they
might
can.
have that, or the people they rent from.
Correct.
Might have those requirements.
Yes.
Be good to look into that.
Yes.
There's currently one program license as an OCCP, if I correct. And that program actually operates under a special use permit from the USDA Forest Service on the Chattahoochee Oconee.
Okay.
So I know the Forest Service they do have law enforcement, but
Yes.
that's,
Other than
if
that,
the
we're-
board feels we need to look into that. I think
Not
that's-
trying to slow anything down.
No, no,
No, it won't slow anything down,
No,
but
we-
they typically right now, they're reporting to local law enforcement
Okay.
if something happens.
All right.
Okay, if a school sponsors an overnight, field trip, do these rules go?
No, ma'am.
They do not have to follow these rules?
No, this is right now, the OCCP, the one that we do have is
Yeah.
privately run program. So they don't have children from, say, the state or DFACS or anything like that. So if you are a summer camp or with a church camp, you do not have to abide by these rules. It doesn't meet those regulations.
Oh, okay.
That's under something, yeah.
Next slide. So here in a moment, we're going to ask the board to approve a motion to publish these for public comment. Presuming the board is agreeable with that, we'd publish them tomorrow. Public comment period would run through May 15th, and we have a public hearing scheduled on May 7th currently. Next slide. So this, I would ask for if there are additional questions. Other than that, we would ask the board for a motion to publish notice of rulemaking.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir. Well, hold on, I gotta do it. The board will now consider
Oh,
the
excuse me.
proposed rule change, back at you now. Rule change from the residential child care licensing related to Rule Chapter 290-2, Subject 290-2-7, rules and regulations for outdoor child caring programs of the state of Georgia of Department of Human Services. Is there a motion?
Hey, Barbie, Mr. Chair, I would move that the proposed amendment to the rules of the Georgia Department of Human Services entitled Rule and Regulations of Outdoor Child Caring Programs be published for the 30-day public period comments.
Is there a second?
Second.
Great, thank you, Jay. It is moved and properly seconded that the proposed rule change from the residential child care licensing be approved for publishing for a 30-day public comment period. Is there any discussion? And if not, then we'll take a vote. All those in favor, raise your hands.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. So it is now passed. So the proposed amendments to the residential child care licensing rules are approved for publishing by the Board of Human Services. Thank you very much for y'all's help.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Smith. I
Yes, sir.
appreciate the opportunity. Good to meet you, board.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. All right, so I think we need the minutes approval vote. You should have the minutes in your documents. The minutes were from January 7th meeting, have been distributed to you. Are there any corrections? Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, Dave Barbie, I move that the Board of Human Services minutes of January 7th meeting be approved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, Marcia coming up. Great. Good, and it is moved and properly seconded that the Board of Human Services minutes for the January 7th meeting be approved. Is there any discussion? If not, we'll now take a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Those that are joining us on video. It is moved and properly seconded that the Board of Human Services minutes January now will now be approved. Oh, I already said that, haven't I?
Yep.
No, sorry. All right, they are approved, and with no dissenting votes. Any new business? Any new business we have to discuss? I think I saw the commissioner slip in.
Candace is back. Commissioner.
How you doing?
Afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Just wanted to see if you had anything to share with us, or?
I don't have anything official for the agenda. I've been thinking about what I could share since it's been a minute since I've been able to join you, and the presentations have been pretty thorough. I will say I think that of the high points to share, we did have a successful session, even though we did not have any legislative agenda. We still had a very robust legislative effort, because there were a lot of bills that involved our agency directly or indirectly. So, kudos to the team and the programs. They put in a lot of long hours reviewing bills and doing the analysis, providing feedback quickly. I don't know why, but this year was just so busy with all the bills flying around, trying to, make an impact in the area of child welfare. And so I think that it ended up turning out really well, and people were receptive to our feedback. And of all the bills that passed, I think that there were a lot of good ones that positively impact children and families. In terms of the budget too, we were really, we ended up in a really great spot. We got a lot of additional funding in the amended budget across programs, and we got substantial funding added in our base budget for fiscal year 2027, and in particular in areas where we were very worried. We were worried about our deficit in out-of-home care, which is the program budget where we fund foster care. There was a substantial projected deficit. We were able to get a lot of funding to help us plug that hole. I thought, I'd been telling myself if I had the chance to have the microphone, I would bring this up, but so I will now. Georgia's not the only state that's been dealing with this. I saw very recently, that our neighbor Tennessee, their governor put in, I think it was about $94 million into the exact same budget, the foster care budget in Tennessee, because of their projected deficit for the exact same issues that we're seeing. And so, I don't know that this issue is something that's going to go away anytime soon. I mean, it's certainly a result due to still unknown variables coming out of the pandemic. Children have extreme mental health needs that the system is not at all equipped to address, and they are coming to us, and we are not resourced for it. And we're doing our very best, but those needs are going up at an exponential rate, which is reflecting in our budget, and we cannot turn them away. The other reality, and I testified to this extensively, is that we also are not the only individuals that control the levers of funding. So if we're court ordered to do something, we better do it. And that was hard to convey that message. And I'm not going to say I got nasty grams from judges, but I got some, they weren't exactly thrilled necessarily with the way I conveyed it in certain circumstances, but it is nonetheless true that we're not the only ones that control the levers. And so it is a system, it's a child welfare system. DFACS is not the only player. And that means that in terms of the budget, I'm not the only one making the calls. And that too certainly played a role in the projected number when we had to go and advocate for the funding. We were really lucky too that we had partners down there helping us. I'd be remiss if I didn't in particular mention Together Georgia and Juanita Stedman. I don't know if any of you know her. She's a former juvenile court judge from Cobb County who was just down there just
working tirelessly to help us on behalf of providers that we contract with to get the additional funding. And so,
What's her last name?
Stedman.
Stedman,
Mhm.
like the hat?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not
That's
spelled the
Stetson.
exact, that's
No, that's
Stetson.
I don't care.
Stetson.
That's what, I can pronounce it.
That's right. So we were really, really grateful for that additional advocacy. The other big thing I thought I would mention is there was here and there talk about the World Cup coming to Atlanta, but I don't think DFACS ever came up, and we definitely have a role. When giant events like that come to Atlanta, that means it has an impact on children. And so quietly, we have already been working with the City of Atlanta, with Atlanta Police Department on task forces to prepare for the impact that those events will have on children, abused and neglected children, children that could be brought into the City of Atlanta and surrounding areas for unfortunate circumstances and situations, trafficking in particular. And so what we're doing right now is trying to see if we have the existing capacity to meet those needs and to be prepared to go out if we're called upon by law enforcement, or if we need to expand. And I think leadership, we already sort of agree we're gonna expand and have more on call.
That would be the, bring back the hotel thing?
No.
But just the.
We'll have more on-call staff.
Okay.
We're looking at having more dedicated, specialized DFAC staff that are maybe co-located with certain law enforcement assets across the metro area. A lot of people don't know this, but we have DFACs staff that are co-located at CHOA hospitals regularly. And so when law enforcement locates a child that's in a trafficking situation, typically what you do is you take them to a hospital to be evaluated, because we already have resources there. You know, we work in partnership, and so that's already something we have in place, but we certainly could expand that for the World Cup. So that's something we're working on right now.
Good.
And we'll continue to work on, and I thought would be a worthy initiative to note for the board. You know, we'll, in terms of long-term strategy, certainly, everyone here knows that it's a big election year. And I'm appointed by Governor Kemp. And unfortunately, you know, he will be leaving soon. But, you know, I think that the agency it will continue to really work on some fantastic initiatives. I'm going to continue to work with everybody here and looking long-term on what we can do. Technology is going to be a big part of that. You know, we have some systems that need to be replaced. We've talked about this here. Yeah. So, we're looking at Shines. Gateway is something that'll be an interagency effort. But Shines in particular is the child welfare case management system. And I know that we've talked about the child support system too, that is already, we're in that
Would
process.
Shine take Gateway's place, or?
No.
Or are you just adding Shine to Gateway?
They would still be standalone, although, you know, you always want those systems to talk to each other as much as possible. So that would be the goal. Just getting something a little more current with the times than the 1990s-ish Shines system that we're operating out of right now.
On these updates to the different computer systems, seems like we've been talking about those for a while, the needed updates. And then they're very much, they've shared this morning or this afternoon how much that they needed those updated, but it was sort of going slow.
They're very expensive. I mean,
but is it a money thing, or is it a don't know what we really need thing? Or what's your evaluation of that?
you know, I think that you could ask any case manager and they could talk to you for a long time about what they need. So I don't know if it's a lack of being able to describe the need. I think that it's just a huge, it's a huge amount of money and time that you need to dedicate to the project. It's also, you have to go through a lot of federal processes. You know, we have to describe the project. We have to work with them to make sure they're comfortable with the parameters. we use a lot of federal funding, so we want to make sure that they're
They like it.
that they approve it, you know, and there's also been a lot of discussion, obviously, about AI and what we can do across state government. There's a lot of consternation about AI in any of our programs in state government in general, but it's something that it's a conversation that needs to be had. So, you know, obviously, if you're going to be replacing these giant systems too, we've got to be thinking about that longer term.
All right, no questions.
I was just gonna ask, the shortfall, do you think this is sort of gonna continue? Would because of the mental illnesses with the kids and whatnot we have to face, is that gonna be a continuing escalation for our department? I mean, the DFACs and the DHS board future references, I mean,
Yes, I do. I mean, unless, you know, so it can go a few ways, right? The need is certainly based on the data.
Okay.
Is exponential. So I don't know how that is going to change, because I don't know that we have identified the drivers yet. We just know that it's mental health related, and we generally know that you know, the kids that we're working with, so we're talking about like teenagers, and the way to curb some of the costs associated with it are things that, of course, we don't want to have to do, right? Which would be you know, putting caps on certain, you know, putting an amount, a cap amount on how much we serve per family, you know, administrative requirements, you know, things like that. And, you know, case managers don't want to have to do that. They want to work with families and give them what they need. And so I think that when in terms of planning, I would like to see that we better leverage other agencies' programs that are better resourced, you know, so that makes me feel like it's not just a question of whether our agency has enough resources and whether we have to just sort of keep costs contained. I'd like for there to just be more collaboration, because there are a lot of resources that aren't fully tapped into, and that's going to require education of the other child welfare partners. So we're trying to get juvenile court judges, for example, to think about getting parents to apply for Medicaid. Instead of ordering us to pay for all of these healthcare related therapies, counseling, substance abuse treatment, right? We're trying to get them to understand that Medicaid may be an option for that indigent parent. Instead of you getting us to pay for it, think about that option for them. Think about directing them to the community service board through DDHDD, right? Because they are there for indigent or underinsured adults and children. So we're trying to do that. And that, I think, hopefully will help us, at least for now, but there's going to have to be federal relief too. I mean, this is just not something the states can fully handle.
That's an interesting thought, because, but if the parents don't meet the standards of Medicaid, how do we get them into Medicaid? Yeah,
I mean, they often do. What we're seeing is they do. They often do.
They do?
Mm-hmm.
They just aren't applying for it.
They don't know about it, right?
Okay, I thought that's what I was wondering. I wondered if they met the requirements to be in Medicaid. Sometimes that was all.
One of the, I don't want to stop you from whatever you're talking about.
As I ramble.
No. One of the things we talked about as a group is, we know that, you know, the over expenditure that the appropriation committee went into their reserve funds to help us with that deficit. Know that they haven't created the group that's going to study how did that happen and all that, but we feel like it'd be great if somebody from our board could be part of that group to my knowledge, they haven't assigned those folks yet.
Mhm.
But how do we go about, how can you help us to get that slot open that we can participate? It's not gonna be year-long or anything.
Mhm.
It's gonna be a short-term committee, right? Or whatever you call it, study group.
Yep.
So is it possible that you could help us get on that?
I'm gonna put someone on the spot. Do you readily remember the composition or?
It's like 20 people. I would have to pull it up because
Yeah.
there's some that are appointed by Lieutenant Governor, House Speaker, Governor.
You'll know all
But
those
I'd
people.
have to go through,
You'll know all those folks.
I mean, certainly, we can make the ask. I think that is a good
reasonable,
request. It
yeah.
makes sense because of your roles. You're also not the only one that's made the request.
I'm sure.
I've had a provider or two, ask.
We just ask for your support on that, and then if you can
Mhm.
work that out, if they tell you no, we understand, but I think it would help if we could be a part, at least from a knowledge standpoint and from a advocacy standpoint.
It would, and I will say this too. I may be beating a dead horse, but I always try to make this distinction. One, it was a projected deficit. If it was an actual deficit, that would be a huge problem, right? So that we made the announcement and we were already making the
You were ahead of it.
changes because we were headed that way. We were not actually there, which is important.
But some of those issues are still there.
Well, we've already made changes so that we can make sure that we're fiscally compliant by the end of the state fiscal year.
Right.
Now, the other thing is that I suspect, I could be wrong, but I'll be 5 years in this role in September. Maybe this group can come up with something truly imaginative that we've never thought of. But I think what they'll find is a maze of systems and accounting that is wildly difficult to decipher. My background was mostly in healthcare, law, and financing, and I thought that was rough. And then I got to child welfare, and I realized that was
Cheesecake.
that healthcare, law, and financing was a mere portion
Yeah.
of the overall formula. And so, that I hope that they'll sort of come to the same conclusion, which is that we are the federal funding streams, the state funding streams, and then the systems that are outdated that we operate within, and then the fact that we're not the only player in the overall child
Yep.
welfare financing structure means that we are doing our very best. I think that they will see that,
Right.
but it's just the whole thing needs to see an overhaul in both in terms of resources and the way that the accounting structure exists.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to find fault.
Right.
I'll say that.
Yeah. All right, well, just whoever can create that advocacy for us, if all you can do is ask.
I'll
And
ask.
we appreciate that. Other questions?
Who am I nominating?
You
can't point fingers at me.
Jack's really good. at
Jack's
this
the
stuff.
closest one, so we're gonna put him in.
I mean, he works down there at the state.
Yeah.
At Georgia State.
Just walk away.
So just.
I'd be happy
I
to help out
nominate
anywhere I
Jack.
can.
That's good. Sorry to put you on the spot, Jack.
No, not a problem.
Okay, all right.
Not a problem.
All right. Okay, any other questions for the commissioner?
I just want to thank her because I think it's very important for us to get the updates from you. We appreciate it.
Yep. Anything else? Anything you want to fuss at about to us?
you'll fuss at us right now.
I have nothing to fuss about.
Yeah, okay, good. All right, good. Well, we appreciate you being here. And so unless there's any other business,
I motion we adjourn.
is there a second
I'll
on that?
second that one.
Second that one? All those in favor? Yes?
Aye.
Thank you. Great meeting. Thank you.
Thank you so much.